the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. If you are new here, as always, thank you so much for tuning in and for joining. Remember that you can follow on the social medias on Twitter and Instagram at the Root of the Science podcast, on Facebook at the Root of the Science podcast group. Make sure that you like and subscribe also wherever you listen to your podcast so that every week you are tuned in for a new episode like today. And to everybody else, all my old listeners, oh my goodness, I love you guys. Thank you so much for always tuning in. You make the show what it is. And remember, we are pushing for 10,000 downloads. So let's go. Share it with a friend. Tag somebody, tag me, leave a review. I love hearing people's comments. So please, and if you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you let me know. Now, let's go into today's episode. My guest today is Nolwandle Khumalo from South Africa. In this episode, we talk about her interests outside of science and how they play a role in her research journey. We also chat about the root of the sciences, and she explains why she initially wanted to be a doctor and shares the influences that later led her to change her mind during her academic journey. Currently, Nolwandle is a PhD student in environmental sciences at Northwest University. Her current research focuses on the microbial exchange that occurs during pollination between honeybees and flowering plants such as sunflowers. So listen in as we hear about the significance of this research, the roots of her science, and of course, so much more. Hi, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for welcoming me. And I think I'm really honored to be part of this show. And yeah, I hope we have a good conversation.
Oh, of course. And you're most welcome to be here. Like, I always tell people, like, it's the behind the scenes of having this chat are always a fun part. But I'm so glad we are here. We are doing it. And, the days have connected. So I'm really excited for everybody to get to know you and everything that you do. So with that being said, can you just give us a brief introduction? Your name, where you currently based, what are you currently doing?
Okay, so I'm Nolwandle Khumalo, right? Dungwa, Mbulasi, Mzilikazi Gamashobane, Nina Nithi Nidla Nibe Bayenga Abantu Ngendaba. And this just did, So I'm from South Africa, Soweto, in a place called Midlands, but a lot of people know it as Ndofaya. But home isn't in KZN, It's actually in Ladysmith, Zakeni, and also in Vryheid. But at this moment, I'm currently based in Potchefstroom, which is a small town in the Northwest Province. And the reason why I'm here, basically, is because I'm doing my PhD in environmental sciences at the Northwest University.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Nolwandle, for that introduction. And we're going to get to know more about everything that you're doing, especially your PhD. But before we get into all of that, you are a human, you are a person. Yes. From being a PhD researcher. So I'd just like us to touch on some of the things that interest you away from the science. And you love the outdoors and nature, and some adventurous things that I saw, running and bungee jumping. So like, what? How? Like, are you not scared of heights?
No, definitely not.
Really?
So I think me as Nolwandle, what can I say? I love things. I'm one person that loves things. I'm an explorer by nature, Anything that you want to do, I always say this, if you want to do anything, I'm definitely the person to call, because you definitely for sure we're going to be, do everything that you want to do. But I guess also for me, that's how I get into these activities, because I just love exploring. So this could be hiking with my friends. I love doing that. Anything that gives me, adrenaline rush, that is bungee jumping, I'm up for it. And you know what, if I'm being honest about it, it's very scary, But 2 minutes prayer there before you jump, it's very important because you don't know it. It's really something scary. But I think I love doing it. I love doing that. So this is literally what I love doing. But if I'm not with my friends or family, I love cooking,
Yeah.
so I'm a pescatarian, right? And I really love showing people that vegetarian food is really nice and good and tasty, because people really think if you're vegetarian, it's all about boiling your veggies. And really, guys, it's not about that. So most of the time I try to cook, my vegetarian food, present it in a nice way. Hopefully, sometimes I try to even convert people there, meat eater people to try, and that over the other side. But yeah, I think that's what I do most of the time. But I think my biggest outlet is running. I love running. Running for me, I think it does wonders to my mental health. I think I get also a lot of my strength, my resilience and discipline from it, because it's the same principle that actually pushes me. So that's that's it about me. Oh, before I forget, I always say this to people. I say running for me, right, is like doing my PhD, right? So it's a race after all. There's a start and also there's a finish line. And obviously there's a whole lot of factors that come into play, right? In terms of how you finish your race and when you actually finish your race. So because of that, I really love what I do. It's a race after all. So it doesn't matter whether I finish it in the record time or in the next, 4 years time. But, at the end of the day, it's just a race. And I know for sure I'm going to finish it.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I love how the things that you do, although we're saying that you're more than just your PhD, but it sort of touches on like some aspects of it, in the sense of, like you said, the discipline and the resilience. And, because I've had conversations even with my own supervisor who always used to say, Anne, the PhD is not hard. Like the degree is not hard. It's that perseverance. It's that discipline.
Yeah.
It's
the discipline that you need to have.
It's that ongoing thing. That's the hard part. He's like, anybody could do a PhD. So I think, in terms of working out and also just sort of with the bungee jumping, how it's sort of like a sense of where you just do something like scary, which is also sort of we can also say like some parts of research, which is a bit scary. You pray a bit like, oh my God, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but then you do it, right. And at the end, you're going to finish, you're going to be able to do it. But I think starting with everything, it's always the scary part.
Yeah. No, actually, I would like to concur and say, no, it's not the start. Okay, well, the start, yes, but it's more the middle. I think the middle is the hardest part. Like, don't you think even when you're running, there's always that part where it gets hard? And same here with the school thing. There's that middle, which is that thing where are you going to quit or are you going to continue because you're almost halfway there? So yeah, I think the middle.
Yes. And you're also tired. I think at that point also, you're also tired. You don't know what's happening. But again, you can't quit. I always see this, as a runner, I always say, because, sometimes I would run and people say, oh, you were able to run this, but you were tired. You could have just quit. I'm like, you know what? Runners don't quit. You never run like a 10 kilometer and then to 7 kilometers. Then you're like, okay, I'm tired. It's over. You push through, hey, regardless of anything, no matter how tired you are, you're like, okay, I'm going to finish this. Let me push through. And you do that. And I think, the PhD is definitely that pushing through part where you're like, okay, I'm tired now. What can I do? Do I need to do this? Do I need to take a rest? Do I need to keep my mental health also in check? Do I need to do all of these other things? But it's a journey at the end of the day.
No, fantastic. I love this analogy. So like you said, you like the outdoors and you've got this sort of disciplined mentality. So I'd like us to backtrack to the very beginning. Was it always there? And even with you being a lover of nature and a lover of doing things, how did this influence you getting into science as a whole, and specifically just the field that you are in? Can you just take us on that journey?
So I think with what I'm doing now, I think all of these interests that I have developed when I was doing my postgrad studies, one thing about the actual studies, it's very challenging and you definitely need an outlet, it cannot be about studying, reading articles every day and whatnot. You need an outlet as a person. You need to be, I have to be Nolwandle apart from what I do. And I guess all of these outlets are just things that for me that I think, grooms me and, keep me, straight in terms of, okay, you need to do this, you're able to do this, I always say this, at the end of the day, if someone were to take away my PhD, then who can I say I am? You know, am I going to say, yeah, if that is taken away, who am I? You know, and I always say this, I can always fall back on all my other interests except from academia.
Yeah,
That, you know,
that's true. That's true. So what were some of those influences that got you before you became this postgraduate student? What made you be like, okay, science is what I want to do when you were younger? Or was it one of those things that sort of happened? Or was it people? Like, what was the story? What was the root of your science?
Okay. So for me, I think I never thought I wanted to do science, right? Because I think growing up for the longest time, I just wanted to do medicine. I always wanted to be a doctor. That's the only thing I knew. But I think that changed, I think, at matric year. So, and the reason why I changed my career option, I think if I remember correctly, I used to attend a Saturday program. Yeah? So what used to happen is students that left the program that are now doing the undergrad studies used to then come to us and just tell us how uni is like. So if I remember, there was this one student who was studying medicine. And at the time, I remember him telling us about all the requirements that are needed to, you know, to do medicine. And the person was mentioning, yeah, you need to do volunteer work, you need to, you know, do extramural activities. And I remember at that moment that, no, I'm not going to be able to get into med school because I'm not doing any of that. The only thing I'm literally doing is just studying. So I think for me at that moment, that's when I realized that I definitely need to change my career. And I think during the matric year, when I applied at VETS, my first and second option were engineering. And my third option was actually science. And you know what? I only got accepted for my third option, which is science. And I know, right? So for me, it was very interesting. But I think now looking at some of the things that actually influenced me, leading to what I'm doing now, I can only pinpoint it, right, to 3 events that actually happened in my entire life. So during high school, if I remember correctly, I used to be one of those people that, you know, watch TV series. So there used to be this TV series that used to play on ETV, I think in the afternoon, and a lot of people know it as Medical Detective. I think another name for it, it's like Forensic Files. Oh, yes. So I remember every day without fail. Yes. And I think either 5 or 6, I used to be at home watching this series, you know, and in all of this, you know, for people that actually don't know what the show is about, it's literally about forensic, you know, experts going through past crimes, accidents, try to solve these cases using science, you know. And really for me, that was exciting because every day when I was watching all these episodes, I was like, these people, you know, there's never perfect crime. These people can't get away with such. And, you know, at the end of the day, really, there's never a perfect crime where science is involved. There isn't, you know, where science is involved, there's never a perfect crime. But also, not long after that, the Department of, I think, Science and Education came to our school to promote careers in STEM. So one of the activities, right, that they had was doing a role play about one of the careers in science. So I remember at that moment, we did a play about being a forensic scientist. And you know what? That was very exciting for me because I remember at that moment, we had to create an entire scene where someone was shot. Then you had the scientists that needed to collect all the biological data. We then had to send the samples to, you know, other scientists that process the data. And literally at the end, we were given a question as to, can we prove that this person, that we also did kill the specific person using, you know, can we prove that using biological data? And really, for me, that was mind-blowing because I was like, okay, this is what I see on TV. Now we're actually playing an entire role play of it. And yeah, I think that, you know, put a spark on everything in terms of what I'm doing. But I think now to be specific, in first year, I think in a microbiology class, I remember there was a course that we learned about microorganisms in terms of what they are, what they do, either good or bad, and how can we actually use them to benefit us. And to be specific now, I remember learning about Ebola, guys. Like for the first time, yes, I think it's a deadly virus, right? But for me, I was so intrigued in terms of how this virus, you know, was able to be transmitted, to be spreading like that, how it was able to take over take control of the body. And really for me, that was mind blowing because I was like, you know what, Nate, this is the tiniest microorganism ever, but look at what it does, look at the effect that it actually plays in our lives. But I think the good side of microbes also still gives me the same excitement because that's when I learned in my set that the same microbes actually can be used to benefit and also improve our lives. And I think that is seen in a lot of industries now, such as your pharmaceutical industries, your agriculture, and also your food industries. And I think at that moment, in that specific course for me, that's when I knew that I want to do microbiology, not any other thing. Because I remember we're doing different, we're exposed to different fields. But for me, microbiology was a stamp. I wanted to do it. And I think after that, and then I think after second year, in my third year level, that's when I was like, okay, you can actually study this, in your postgrad and study how all these microorganisms, work, try to manipulate them in the lab and whatnot. So I ended up doing my honors and I did my MSc also at Wits. So yeah, that's about it.
So interesting. I think the parts in the stories of your influence that comes through is just the major goal about visibility, because you saw these things on TV, the show. I remember it too. For me, how I remember it was that it was sort of like CSI, because I was low-key obsessed with CSI, but like the more real version of CSI. So I remember that show. So just back to the point about visibility and the play. So it's that thing as a child, you are being shown the possibilities and learning about all of these things, because dare I say, if you were not, you would have just been like, I don't know, all I want to do is whatever you're being shown at that point.
Yeah, true. True. I would have decided to do any other thing, but because of the of these specific events, for me, it was like, it was mind blowing.
Yeah, definitely. So then, okay, you do all of this stuff and we think you're excited. You're in this career that you've sort of seen yourself from such a young age. How do you divert? Where does that happen, where you divert into this new discipline from the biological sciences more to the environmental sciences, where you are now?
Okay. So what happened was, obviously, I did my honors in MSc at Wits, and then from there on, I think after submitting my MSc, I just wanted to take a break because I think I was just too exhausted. I think at that moment I was done. I was just done with science. But what I then did is I did applied for an internship, and I then did my internship through the NRF. So what happened was then the NRF internship was then based in Potchefstroom in the Northwest University, and that's how I actually came into about. So obviously after the internship ended, there was an opportunity, in the microbiology department to actually work with sunflowers and plants. And I was like, okay, why not? I love this. And that's how I actually ended up here. It's literally through the internship. If it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have even came here if it wasn't for that. So,
okay, for somebody who's unaware, who's never really had any dealings with environmental sciences and biological sciences, when you did your transition, was there a major shift, or was it sort of like seamless, because in terms of what you knew? Because I think a lot of people do this, where they do something, let's say honors or masters, and then for PhD they change their major and they go into a different discipline. So for you, when you did that change, was it a major change, or were you able to adapt seamlessly into the other field?
I think for me, it was actually challenging because I moved from obviously biological to environmental science, and also the project that I was working with from my honors to my masters were different. So in my honors and masters, I was working with nematodes. So nematodes are basically worms that you found on the ground and that can actually be used as your biocontrol agent. So from there on, I then moved to the environmental side of it, where you're not only focusing on the microbe, but obviously the entire environment, what happens. You now look at the soil, the plant, what does the plant interact with and all of that. So I think for me, that was quite challenging because I had to learn a lot of things from scratch, I only took a few things from what I've learned, obviously from my MSc to my PhD, but from my PhD, I had to learn everything from scratch. Like, okay, oh, there's a plant now, because I've never worked with plants before. So I had to learn, what is a plant, or a plant, it's there outside. What does it do? What, affects it? What does the plant do? What does it give off? What affects the plant and all of that. So I think for me, it was quite challenging, really, because I had to learn everything from scratch. I had to learn the environmental side part of it from scratch. But, it's a learning process. So I'm still learning even now. I don't know anything. I'm literally still learning.
No, I mean, that's what they say, that, that's what a PhD is. You learn and you learn and you learn. So specifically to your PhD on what you're currently doing, you are interested in understanding the microbial exchange between honeybees and flowering plants such as sunflowers during pollination. That's so interesting. Can you tell us more about this project and why it's so important?
So with my project, I'm focusing on pollination, and just to give a bit of, of introduction, definition of pollination.
Mm-hmm.
So pollination is just the transfer of pollen from the male part of the plant to the female, leading to fertilization and ultimately the production of seeds and your fruits. So in my case, I'm looking at the pollination that happens between honeybees and sunflowers. So what happens then is honeybees pollinate sunflowers, right? And then in turn, sunflowers provide the nectar and the pollen to the honeybees, which is a good source of their carbohydrate and their protein. But in my project, that's not what we want to know. We want to understand what exactly happens during the entire interaction. So we know there is, or could be an exchange of microorganisms from the sunflowers to the honeybees, again, from the honeybees to the sunflowers. But what are these microorganisms that I'm talking about? So endophytes are microorganisms, either fungi or bacteria, that actually coexist within the tissues of flowering plants without causing any disease. And this cannot be mistaken with your epiphytes, which are just your microorganisms that are found on the surface of the plant. So endophytes, or these either your bacteria or fungi, actually offer, I think, several benefits to the plant, such as growth promotion, protection from plant pathogens, improving their tolerance against a lot of, environmental factors. However, what we now know is that little information is actually known about what microbes are actually transferred between the plant itself, the pollinator, and the microbe, and also whether the entire association does contribute to ecosystem sustainability. So I think at the end of the day, understanding, I think, such interactions will ultimately help us improve and protect the honeybee pollination, but also, have a model in terms of we can use it to promote the growth of the plant, which is definitely important in your agricultural sector.
Wow, that's so fascinating. That's really fascinating. I didn't even know that such, like you said, like those microorganisms exist.
Yes. So I always see this, guys, the microorganisms everywhere, on your phone, on your surface, when you cough, there's microbes everywhere. We live amongst them. And, some others are bad for us, definitely, and others are really good for us. And if they're good, we're trying to see how we can manipulate them in order to improve and, improve our lives.
And definitely,
basically.
I think there's also, this might be a very shallow understanding, but I just remember there's this cartoon called the Bee Movie, right? And have you never heard of it? I should look for it.
I think I have, but the last time I think I watched it was like many years ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like my understanding of where, I just want you to understand where it's coming from. So it might be shallow, but it just showed me how important bees are as pollinators for the whole environment, and how not only maybe for because you mentioned that it's important for the agriculture sector, and as somebody who is in agriculture, you understand why these different types of pollinators are actually very important in terms of the whole transfer of pollen and seeds and whatnot. So obviously your work it's so interesting. It's very intricate and quite interesting, but it's got far-reaching circumstances than just what you're doing. And all the best with that. That's really, really exciting.
Thank you so much. Because I think even now people based on what people know, they only know that bees only just produce honey, wax, and collect pollen. But I always say that's not the only thing that they do, right? Literally, they do a whole lot they play a huge role, in food security and a lot of like biodiversity of many ecosystems. So they are a really huge, role players in our lives. And, it's for me, that is quite interesting.
Definitely. Really. Like I said, I watched the bee movie and that's when I saw, I was like, oh my word, these things.
Like, yeah, there's something going on here.
Not like, because I think, like you said, we only know them for the honey part, or if they sting us.
The honey,
they sting us and it's a bad thing, but they are so, so, so important. So, yeah. As we spoke about, speaking about your research and your move to Potchefstroom, etc. Sometimes we said that in the beginning that science is like really hard. There are tough moments. However, I want us to talk about some of the best parts of your research, right? So for you, what gets you excited about going to the field or to the lab? Because there are days where you're like, yes, I'm doing a PhD, like those real days. Yeah. So what's one of those things where, those days are a lot, but I'm sure there's some of those good days that are like, okay, actually I'm excited to go. So today I'd like to focus on that because we've been crying about how hard it is. So I want us to look more at so for you, like what are those days? Is it the lab? Is it field work? What is it that gets you like, I love what I'm doing?
So for me, I think the best part about what I'm doing is the ability to work with both insects and plants. And you know what, now because of this, I'm a proud plant mom, I have more profound love now for plants, I want to have a lot of plants to grow, but yes. But what really gets me excited it's the little things for me. Literally, it's wearing my branded lab coat. Like, the lab coat that I have, I wash it, put it close there. I love wearing my lab coat, it also has my name there. So that gets me excited, really. And also putting on my gloves. For me, and I don't know, it's just exciting, wearing my lab coat, my gloves puts me in the mood for anything. But also, I think entering the lab for me, I always say this, there's always a question in my mind that you always want to get answered for. And because there's always a possibilities of always getting something different that could be frustrating in most of the time. But for me, it's also exciting, it's a love and hate relationship, because you go into the lab thinking, this is what I want to do. Let me perform this experiment and hopefully I'm trying to get this, but you don't get that. And it's frustrating. But for me, I love it. It keeps me on my toes. And that's it. I think it's learning. It's a lab is a controlled environment. So learning for me, it's important because I learn every time I go there. I'm always doing something different compared to what I was doing, I think a few days ago or a week ago. So I think that's about it. I don't before I forget also, I don't do a whole lot of field work. So most of my studies are actually lab-based. But if I remember correctly, I think there was a time where we had to go collect sunflowers. And you know what, I have never collected sunflowers or be in a sunflower field. But I think being there made sense, everything literally made sense because talking about bees pollinating and actually seeing them pollinate like right there, I don't know, for me it just put everything into perspective and I loved it. So
like the bigger picture.
Yeah, you see the bigger picture when you're there because now, I always say the interactions from the soil to the plant and while you're there, you're able to see everything and how it plays, So I think I loved it.
No, that's fantastic. I also love how you said you love your lab coat and your gloves.
Yes,
it just reminds
I iron my lab coat every time I wash it properly. And the fact that it's branded, guys, it has my name on. I don't know. It just puts me in a good mood every time.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It reminds me of like for us when we were in undergrad, like first year, we got our lab coats And like everybody knew the first years, because the first years would wear their lab coats from like 12, even before their practical starts at 2 o'clock. And they would walk with them, like even in the shops, that's how much they loved their lab coat. And it's so nice. You do feel like, yes, I'm a scientist. So it just
you feel like, I'm a scientist. I'm able, to change lives, change the world. That's how you feel the moment you do that.
Yeah, and also the gloves.
The entire.
No, I love how for you that has still stayed up until now. I don't get to wear my lab coat as much, but because I'm more in the field. But yeah, no, the moments that I do, it's like, so yeah, no, I see this vision. I see why you like it. I see why you like it so much. What did I want to say? Okay, so as we are speaking about the good times, we're gonna bring it down to some of the hard times, but I don't want to like wallow in it too much. I just want to ask, for you, because you mentioned that, some of the downsides of a PhD, some of the relationships that you have to deal with, that supervisor-student relationship, where sometimes a supervisor might sort of, micromanage you or not manage you enough. So for you, how have you sort of like been able to navigate that?
I think for me, it's very important to ask, when is the expected feedback in terms of how everything is like, I used to, from having a supervisor that micromanage you to not, I think when you're in that environment and you understand how your supervisor works, it's important to literally ask, when do they expect the feedback? Is it every 2 days? Is it every week? Is it every monthly? How do they like to be notified about it? Do they want you to send them emails? In that case, I think for me, it literally helps to create timelines regarding regarding the task, in terms of when is the start date, when is the end date, when do I need to actually give my progress, and also importantly, making sure my lab work, is up to date. When I say I was, in the lab on the 20th, it should reflect also on my lab book and also what I write. So I think literally that's okay. You just need to know when are you expected to give feedback, so that there's no clashes in between. And if you know that, then it's easier to work around that.
I think that's some really solid advice, and I hope, and I'm glad that you're able to figure it out. And like you said, it comes with time. Maybe not in the first time that you get in with your supervisor, you might know how each other work, like etc. But then as time goes, and also maybe as you move on from, let's say, honors to your masters and different type of people, you also get a little bit more confident to be like, okay, what do you need from me, etc. So I hear you. So that's some really solid advice. And as we're speaking about solid advice, and we are wrapping up this really important conversation that we've had, I just wanted to ask if you had any like golden nuggets, last words of wisdom about getting into science, or just in life as a whole, about some of the things that you've navigated before we close off.
Okay, I think for me, for anyone that wants to do their postgraduate studies, I think it's important for them to do their research, right? Like, do your research. I think also we're in a place now where a lot of people that we know are in STEM careers. So ask them, in terms of what, each of the field entails, so that we actually make a better informed decision at the end. But also, I think if you want to go into a different lab, make sure you have a conversation with the supervisor, like a face-to-face conversation with the supervisors. Ask the students in the lab in terms of how everything is like, so that you can see whether you're able to fit in or not, because it's very important. Personality clashes sometimes, and you don't want to be in an environment that's very difficult. On top of that, PhD is difficult, so it's not going to work. So I think at the end of the day, make sure you have funding. But most importantly, whatever project that you're doing, or whatever field that you're doing, make sure you love it. That's it. Make sure you love what you're doing, because it's what will push you to finish. Because if you don't love it, it's really going to be hard for you. So just love what you're doing. And live your best life at it.
About living your best life. I think, balance somehow.
Yeah, balance. You need to balance both the PhD and you in life and everything.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely you chatting with us and teaching us about what you're doing and just gaining some insights on how you've navigated your academic STEM journey, life journey, everything. So thank you so much for coming on. I had a really great time.
I also had a great time. Thank you so much for, giving me the opportunity to talk about myself.
You're so welcome. And to everybody else who's tuned in, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Until next time, goodbye.